Awesome. Well, welcome everybody and good afternoon. My name is Lee Roberts and I'm a shareholder and director of sales here at Bergen KDV, and we just enjoyed the continuation of these town halls and webinars that we've been doing. One of our core missions is really to expose our business leader clients and COI friends and others to really what we're seeing on the front lines. And today we're some information that we've covered a little bit in the past, but some new stuff as well that really is the basis of myself as well as many others. But for context, myself, I've been in 3,000 business discussions over the last 12 months on a variety of topics. And for those of you that are newer to Bergen KDV offers 62 unique business solutions to customers. And what excites me most about today is we do any of those 62 if we don't take this topic of security and risk very, very seriously. So I'm very excited to welcome you all here and jump right into it and try to provide you a latest of things that we believe are important for you to know. And it's one of the things that we know our clients appreciate and our prospects appreciate and others that are just friends of the firm appreciate. Very excited to bring you Jake Wagner. He's one of our resident experts, and I have the rare pleasure of being able to lead and work alongside of him every single day. All of his time in this space and is going to facilitate most of the discussion today, and then I'll provide commentary, and I think we're even going to do a little storytelling maybe here as we go forward as well. So without further ado, Jake, let's expose to what's going on.
Cool. Yeah, appreciate it, Lee. And round 3 here, I think. So always look forward to these. And Bethany, thank you as well for getting this polished as usual to set us up for success. So as Lee mentioned, I am the IT sales specialist here at Bergen KDV. And yes, I do spend every waking minute at Bergen KDV talking about this stuff. And we do challenge ourselves often, some self-reflection of, boy, if we could just get you to understand what we understand, then this would all be far more clear and far more simple. So the way that we've set this agenda up today, we're not going to get into the technical weeds, not at all. And if you're looking for that, there's a lot of software vendors out there. You could go and sit through kind of the dog and pony. The objective today is truly, like Bethany kicked it off, what do you guys want to learn? We do have an agenda, but we'd love you guys to fill the chat in with why are you here? What brought you here? Surely cybersecurity is top of mind. We're going to touch on topics like insurance. We're going to talk about regulations. But consider as we go through this, what is your team's current security posture? Do you know today? That's going to be a strong message we want to convey. Have you had any recent issues? Some of the statistics you can find online says that last year, 98% of small to medium-sized businesses experienced some sort of cybersecurity incident. So have you had a recent issue? What are you hearing from your peers? What's confused right now with all of these changes? And what do you guys think you're most concerned about right now prior to diving in? So I'll tell you quickly, the objective of the call, this town hall, this presentation today is we want you to leave today asking better questions around IT and cybersecurity topics. Armed with that education, you're going to get a lot quicker results. You're going to get to the root of your problems far more efficiently. And in that pursuit, you'll be able to clearly identify at least one item to take action on immediately. And that is the core takeaway here. So to achieve this, Lee and I are going to take you through a little thought stacking exercise. We're going to start with some core concepts that we can all call market perspectives. What's changing, what's new, what's coming to your business sooner than you think. That's very important to glimpse into that pipeline. And then having completed those updates, we're going to cover a variety of IT strategies and elaborate on a bit on each to allow you to identify which of these items seems to be most similar to your current situation today. And once you know where you're at and where you stand compared to others, we can now begin to navigate your possible alternatives. And then naturally along the way, as Lee mentioned, we do have some stories, some horror stories we're willing to share. It's really the downside of neglecting this stuff, the negative implications, if you will. So in your pursuit of doing better, what wisdom can be shared by us and your peers for that matter to help you avoid the costly mistakes that we call landmines? And finally, by this point in time, 50 minutes from now, if we're successful in conveying our message, bringing you along this thought stacking exercise, you will understand what we understand, which makes the how to buy portion of today's presentation that much easier. when you get right down to it, there are only a few options today to choose from that actually make sense for your business, and we want to try our best to help you see that. So, and then naturally, if we have some time left over here for the Q&A, absolutely. But I want to try and lace a lot of that in as we go here. So, long intro to the agenda, but that is the objective here. This is time well spent. This is important stuff. And without further ado, we're just going to kick it off and talk about the golden age of cybercrime first and foremost. We've talked about this in previous presentations, but the Internet of Things, IoT. So one of the few acronyms you'll see today. What does that mean? That means everything is connected today. Infinite number of endpoints, and business runs on IT, and we've already established that. So in this past year, the only thing that's changed, the only update I have for you is we've only gotten more connected. This isn't just about the manufacturing floor. It's your smartphones, it's your appliances, it's your vehicles, it's subscription services. You might even have a dog walking around your house with a tech gadget on, one or two. So every one of us is plugged in and absolutely inundated with technology today, which means we're all prospects for the bad guys. Now, we're going to talk about the bad guys in a second here, but the only thing that's changed there is they've gotten smarter. They've gotten more aggressive. They've gotten more sophisticated. Things like double and triple extortion techniques, criminal collaboration, and I highlighted in bold there, criminal collaboration, ransomware as a service. This idea of if you are a bad guy, and not even a very good bad guy, not a very effective bad guy, if you've got a little bit of money in your pocket and bad intentions, head on out to the dark web, and just as you would buy a car as a service or buy your phone as a service, you can hire ransomware as a service and go out and attack whoever your target vector is. So if that's not scary enough, we want to just figure out how are these breaches happening. This is primarily what I want to focus on is the phishing. You can see the core takeaway from this slide is that the threats are coming from every single direction today. And it's just a matter of, can we put the blinders on and focus on one particular solution and assign some tools that can effectively mitigate or eliminate that risk. So the one that we selected today is the lion's share of these attacks. So compromised credentials via phishing, not with a reel and a rod, but similar techniques. And to point out the sophistication level of these bad guys, I want to describe to you that there's actually 6 ways of phishing today, and it seems pretty organized to me. So you've got deceptive phishing, where the sender of, say, a malicious email looks like it's a recognized sender, right? And this is the number one is the idea most people have of phishing today. It's kind of the layman's understanding of phishing. Hey, it looks like Lee Roberts at Walk Talks and acts like Lee Roberts. And Lee Roberts sends me an email and says, hey, Jake, we've got so-and-so prospect coming up. Would love for you to go and get a $250 Starbucks gift card and send it to me here. And I go out and I just blindly do it. So that's kind of the limited understanding of phishing. But there's actually 5 other ways that the bad guys are targeting your organization today. So, and I'll just talk on them briefly. So spear phishing, the idea of social engineering. All of us today have a social profile floating out there in the web, our alter ego, so to speak. Very, very easy to gather those pieces and put together a fake Lee Roberts or a fake Jake Wagner. So spear phishing is very targeted, leverages a lot of social engineering. Whaling, for the fun of it, is kind of high profile trickery. It's going after the C-level. There's a tendency to believe that C-levels like to skip out on some of the security training. So if IT and cybersecurity isn't top of mind for leadership, then a lot of C-levels are quite vulnerable. So whaling is just going after the high profile targets. Phishing with a V, this is voice phishing. So this is where, say, you get a call and it's the IRS, right? It's the IRS. May we please verify, Lee, your social security number, your date of birth, yada, yada, yada. People fall for that all the time. What's concerning about that is your phone lines can be compromised. The smishing is referring to texting or SMS. Same thing, your phones can be compromised. So you get a text message that says, hey, you won a new car, you won this raffle. People click on those links, unfortunately. So last but not least is just farming, again with a PH there. And this is just the general idea of you happen to think you're on the right website and you're entering your credentials, but you're actually on the wrong website, a fake, malicious website entering your correct credentials. So just a sneak peek here. I think this is about as technical as it gets. We just wanted to, what's a good nugget here? The takeaway is that the bad guys are ever increasing their understanding of how to infiltrate your personal lives and your business. And as and we'll transition here real quick. Lee, I know we talk about this a lot, and I can pass it over to you guys, pass it over to you real quick on this. But Can you talk a little bit about, just cybercrime represents the largest organized crime syndicate in the world today. And last year, I know we pulled some data out, but do you just want to address this real quick and then acknowledge the 3 trillion cap for these top Fortune 50 companies?
Yeah, I think it's just trying to put it into context. It's always been kind of this thing that's out there that, the head in the sand, or it's just not going to affect me. I have nothing these people want. Just kind of that mindset has been where we've been over the last, let's say, 5 years. And obviously, a lot more of these stories and things are becoming front page news. A lot more people are being infected. Some of it minimal disruption. Others are very, very sad stories. But when you look at these companies, which everybody recognizes, we're just trying to put a way to articulate this in context. And if you take a look at the market cap of the companies that are listed there, many of them very, very successful. They dominate their space. This is market cap than those. And that is how serious and how big this is becoming. And if this is something that you're not talking about and you're not getting everybody in the organization to really pay attention to, as Jake said, I'm not sure on this education front that we can do anything more to make it real, because it's very, very big, and it's very, very sophisticated, and it's only growing.
Which is precisely why, we toss around millions and billions and trillion figures like it's nothing today. So that's why I wanted to throw some commas in there and throw some zeros in there. So last year, there was an estimated 622 million cyber attacks. That's a lot of zeros. Up 50% from 2020, by the way. So just to talk about this, it's not a linear curve. This is exponential. The bad guys are doubling and tripling down. $6 trillion global market cap in 2021. So once again, a lot of commas and a lot of zeros. What's the outlook look like for 2022? Well, if you're in their shoes, if you could go from 2 trillion last year to 6 trillion this year, I suppose the sky's the limit in 2022. And again, we just, as real as we can make this, there are some very prominent names and logos there. Last year combined, after some successful years, despite COVID and everything, $3 trillion market cap. So it just shows you how lucrative this cybercrime is. And we just want to point out that they are reinvesting. Okay, these bad guys are not getting caught. Far and few between are getting caught. They're reinvesting. They're tooling, retooling, and that's kind of back to that phishing technique. There weren't 6 phishing techniques last year. Okay, so let's meet the bad guys real quick. And this is kind of the end of the FUD portion of the presentation here. But I just want to highlight that there's kind of 3 main categories today of the bad guys. So we've got the cyber criminals. They're just after the cheddar, okay? What you and I both think of when you say cybercrime, oh, it's cyber criminals, right? Well, there's also cyber hacktivists, self-proclaimed cyber hacktivists. They're not really about green dollars per se. Maybe they're about green energy, maybe ExxonMobil or BP or some other. They've got their targets and their sights set on those particular targets because, hey, you're killing the environment, right? So we're just going to try and shut you down for fun. The Colonial Pipeline, for instance, maybe it's not all about the money. Maybe we're just, maybe there's a little bit of nation state stuff going on. So that's where column number 3 comes in, the cyber nation states. We've been talking about this for some time. We know what's going on. That little heat map there that you can see kind of shows you the areas or regions that are most affected by cybercrime. And then it just seems like a fun coincidence that there's some particular areas in here that aren't being negatively affected by cybercrime. Arguably, they're the ones initiating that cybercrime. So we call those cyber nation states to be super politically correct. What I just want to point out real quick before a quick story with Lee is just this whole Russia versus Ukraine. Obviously, everyone's heard about it. But the thing is, as soon as we start hearing on Fox or CNN or MSNBC about this physical war going on, what most people don't realize, and if you head out to, say, msspalert.com, there's plenty of articles out there that are tracking the actual Russia versus Ukraine cyber war. And that's been going on for months and months and months and months, dating all the way back to, I believe, August of last year when some of the first hits started to occur, shutting down utilities, taking over power plants and things of that nature. So the point of bringing up Russia and Ukraine real quick is that not just to be timely and relevant, but to acknowledge that if it can happen over there, willingly and whenever Russia decides to flip the switch, if it can happen over there, it can happen here. Okay, so Lee, can we talk about a particular vendor story that we're aware of real quick? I'll pass it back over to you, and I want you to just be sure to talk about the sliding scale and the amount of preparation that went into what ultimately took place there. So can you tackle that for me quick?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. And everybody hears these stories. And as Jake said, there's a lot of fear that's put out here. And my goal with this story is not the fear. There's a couple of really specific things that I hope you learn from this, is really why I'm telling it. So as I mentioned, we have the opportunity and we use a lot of large vendors to be able to provide services to our clients. And we're exposed to a lot of things that happen, whether they're asking us to certain vendor requirements or doing business requirements with regards to our security stack, or they're going to mandate it. And we'll talk a little bit more about Jake and my belief of how that's going to go over the coming years. But anyways, a $3 billion company had been in a primarily private hosted environment in a cloud on their side of the wall. They had been moving actively their stuff to Google, Amazon, other types of hosting services, but they had a private cloud that was still in the on-premise side of things. And what they were doing is they were hosting a on-premise client server app, and they were making it available remotely, a kind of Citrix, VPN type way of getting in. And it was really, really big clients. So that's why it was the laggard of getting moved. It was companies like T-Mobile and Coke and Learjet and those types of items. And they were phished by one of the techniques that Jake talked about. So they were phished. They were doing training at the employee level and all the things from a baseline that should have happened. Interestingly, they also had Mandiant Security, which is one of the big billion-dollar leaders in cybersecurity across the globe, on retainer, executing on 30 proactive projects a week for them to help make sure that they were secure. They also had a large law firm on retainer, and they actually did a role play of how to come back from an event like this 2 weeks roughly prior to happening. So basically, long story short, within hours of suspicion, they had the security company obviously well engaged. They had brought in their legal team, and within about roughly an hour, something I've never heard before, but I guess isn't that surprising, is the legal team actually, by what happened and just some nuances of what they saw, actually knew within a couple of hours who actually did it, because they had already negotiated multiple settlements and cases with them over the past number of months. So that was very surprising to me. And basically, to just give you a little bit more context of what actually happened, things, spending money, trying to be proactive. The bad actors were in there for months. They strategically chose when to deploy it to impact the most pain. And that organization was still down in that environment for over 30 days. So when we talk about the fact that we really shouldn't be ignoring these things, again, I don't know how much more of a relevant story I can say as far as, you can argue, are you going to be a target, or are they going to be a target? You're not special, and we'll talk about that a little bit more as we get going forward. So in addition to being down for 30 days, also a spreader in that there were some other businesses that got compromised as part of that as well. Not only did they get compromised, it went through the connection points that Jake talked about. So it's just one story as you listen to their security people and their executives talk about this. Very disheartened, very angry, calling it things like terrorism and other things. It can happen, and we feel very bad for those folks, even when you are doing the utmost prevention. So it was just one story that I wanted to share with a couple bits of things that they had practiced it. Few organizations ever practice it, very few, and they actually, the legal firm knowing who it was quite surprising as well. So.
It's like off Home Alone, Lee, the sticky bandits or the wet bandits. They got their calling card today. I think what's most alarming about that story is I guarantee most people haven't heard of it. Obviously, we didn't name names there, but most people probably haven't heard of it. And just as a fun exercise, if any of you participate, I think we've got some folks young and old on here. If you've got your Rotary clubs or your YP clubs or a different business networking event, you know, that 98% figure I touted at the beginning of this, show of hands in your networking group, who here has been affected by some sort of cybersecurity issue? What was the result? You know, hearing it from us is one thing, but obviously, hey, you can take it as we're a little biased, but talk to your peers about this stuff. Get the conversation going, because ignoring it doesn't eliminate the problem. So the other takeaway here, just from Lee's story, and this is kind of a bold statement, but nobody today is 100% secure. Nobody is. So even the $3 billion organization with a $1 billion security company helping them out, nobody's 100% secure. So these are kind of some core principles. If you've got the capability of screenshotting today, if you say, hey, I'm going to be going back to my leadership team or the boardroom or the directors, what have you, what are some core principles that you guys need to adopt? If you choose to take this more seriously, what are some core principles? Here they are. You need to treat everything like it's vulnerable. They call it trust but verify, but everything's vulnerable today. You need to ask a lot of questions and not be afraid to ask questions, especially if you've got dedicated IT resources. He or she, you cannot just take their word for it, because you're putting your entire business on the line. So ask a lot of questions. Don't be ashamed of that. Assume people won't follow the rules. Okay, that goes with training, that goes with your incident response planning. Assume people won't follow the rules. So how do you make it painfully simple? If you don't need it, get rid of it, AKA streamline. Okay, less clicks, less cables, less boxes, the better today. So if you don't need it, get rid of it. Funny story, just out prospecting, doing a discovery with an opportunity here earlier this week. The lead IT guy there said, you know what, I've unplugged about 30% of our servers here because I don't know what they're doing. Nobody else knows what they're doing. And it's been an entire month and no one's complained. So just like that, 30% of their server stack is gone, and all of the savings associated with it. So number 5, this is perhaps one of the most important. Document everything and audit regularly. We're going to hit on that a lot, and why, with what macro changes are occurring right now, why that is so important to have that documentation and the recurring audits to demonstrate year-over-year progression. And then last but not least, to Lee's point, plan for failure. Why? Because it seems rather likely that at some point something's going to slip through the cracks here, no matter how much you're spending on the front end. So emphasis on number 6. Now, speaking of failure, the knee-jerk reaction we get often enough. So this is Lloyd, right? Is it Lloyd or Harry? I think it's Lloyd. So it's okay, right? I'm a limo driver. It's okay, Jake. I don't need to worry about failing. I've got cyber liability insurance. Okay, first question. Are you sure that you've got cyber liability insurance? So I want to pass it back over to Lee again for another fun little real world, real example insurance story. And then we're going to talk about the fine print.
Yeah, you're gonna make me start crying. But long story short, I'm doing a home renovation, and I am not at the property very often. And I showed up, and it looked like the scene in Home Alone where you walk down the stairs in the basement, and the wet bandits had flooded the building. So things were floating around, and there was quite a bit of water in there. And upon following the procedures that we would all advise folks to do, like call your agent, and then first thing the agent doing, having the adjuster comes out, it was very clear that there were things within my particular policy that were overrides and caveats and the like to exactly where the water came from. And the water came from inside the house, but the way that the policy was written, the water was argued to be coming from outside the house. And it's a very contentious, sad story as far as what's actually going to be the outcomes. But it was a perfect example where you think you're insured and you don't ask all of the right questions or role play all of the right scenarios when you bind a policy. And it's going to be that little unique corner case of either what you did when it happened and you didn't follow the exact steps that are required, or there's going to be some unique corner case that the underwriters and the actuaries are getting smarter about, that they carve out that we as the consumer don't know. And this is a whole wide open new space that continues to change very, very quickly, as all of our insurance friends that are on here know. And Jake brought up one example here again as we try to expose you to what this looks like. Jake, kind of dive into this and relate it back to cybersecurity.
Yeah, so just a trip down memory lane here, from the original cyber insurance policy, I believe it was Lloyd's of London that had invented it. So this was new territory, uncharted territory. And as you said, insurance companies, and we've probably got some insurance friends on the call here, insurance companies aren't necessarily designed to lose. They are a business just like the rest of us. So they're not designed to lose, but that's exactly what they were doing. They were losing year over year and handsomely on the cybersecurity side. So what do you do? Well, for starters, you got to get a lot smarter about the topic. Okay, you got to start asking better questions. You need to figure out what the heck you're insuring. And in addition to that, in the meantime, an easy fix is you raise premiums. So that is the case today. Lee, you bring up an important point before transitioning here. There are organizations possibly on this call right now that are sitting on what I would, and I'm using air quotes if you can see my visual, you are sitting on potentially a legacy insurance policy right now. You might have a general liability policy with a little cyber insurance rider. You might have a dedicated cyber insurance line item that you paid $1,500 for back in 2019. Times have changed. The questions have gotten far more aggressive, and the policies themselves have become far stricter. I'm not picking on Travelers here. Travelers and Chubb are probably two of the gold standards today from a cyber insurance perspective. Bergen KDV is not taking a position here to recommend any particular insurance market. I'm just simply pointing out, even on a gold standard policy, this is merely part one of several pages of the fine print. And if you are like me, who often scroll 40 pages, check the box that I read everything and click yes to accept and agree, you might be sitting on an old policy right now and some serious false sense of security. So when the time comes, when you peek behind the curtain, when the bad thing finally happens, and it likely will, and you call your insurance provider, there's a chance that you're sitting on a legacy policy right now. So it pays to pay attention to this stuff. And I just wanted to give you guys, Lee and I wanted to talk just a big update on cyber insurance. We work with a lot of organizations here at a local level because this is just so inherent and intertwined in our cybersecurity world today. Back in 2019, if you were doing the right things, emphasis on the right things, your average cyber insurance premium was $1,500. You know, the questions that you asked were, can you spell IT and do you want cyber insurance? Yes and yes. All right, you get a premium. So in 2022, if you're doing the right things, the average premium today is about $33,000 for a dedicated cyber insurance policy. Back in 2019, you got asked 4 questions to bind a policy. In 2022, you've got 4 pages of questions to answer on the cyber risk questionnaire. Oftentimes when you're going through, back to the fine print real quick, when you're going through those 4 pages, and I hear this every single day when I'm out prospecting, yes, it is renewal time. Yes, we are going through this questionnaire. And I'll be honest with you, Jake, I don't know what the hell I'm answering right now. I'm saying yes to stuff that might be a maybe, and I'm saying maybe to stuff that I'm pretty confident is a no, but I know we need this policy. Well, guess what? Fraud warnings pointed out right here in Travelers. If you falsely enter and knowingly falsely enter any of that information, you're going to be void of coverage. So again, that false sense of security. So today, if you're doing the right things, and we're going to talk about that, what those are. If you're doing the right things, you probably have 9 to 10 market options out there when you're shopping around through your broker. If you're doing the wrong things, at best, you've got 2 options. They're not good options, and they're not cheap. So as mentioned, if you fail to comply as well, if you cannot answer an adequate number of these questions, then the insurance provider has no issue just walking away, and you don't get to bind coverage. So you'd be surprised how many organizations out there don't have a policy and can't get a policy, and they wonder why. So a low risk renewal come renewal time. For those of you out there that might be on a legacy policy and your 3 years is up and it's time to take a look at this again. The good news is your premiums might only be going up 30 to 40%. Okay, it's kind of that herd mentality here. Even if you aren't the culprit or the driving force behind these premium increases, you're going to fall into the rest of the pile here because some of them are ruining for you. High risk renewal. High risk renewal would be, hey, an incident happened. We didn't have adequate coverage. We somehow survived, and now we would like to go and bind coverage. You are going through at least 100, 150% increase in your premium. So the average cost per breach data record today, and that's what's important because data is the new oil, okay, in this world, in the cybersecurity world, data is the new oil. The average cost per breach data record, so think of a set. You capture my name, you capture my email, a portion of my social security number, and maybe a medical record, okay? So depending on how robust that data set is on Jake Wagner, that could range from a penalty standpoint between $143 and $215. This is all subjective. There's a lot of variables that go into it. The point is it's friggin' expensive. So the average cost then for a total breach, depending on your business side and the number of records that ultimately would have been compromised, $300,000, so 6 figures minimum, 7 figures very, very likely today. I was absolutely shocked to see some of this new information come out. And this is from a lot of different sources. I went with the low side. 4.4 million was actually the number today, is the average expected cost of a true cybersecurity breach. So for the, what is it? Oh, well, we've got 220 people participating. Now, for all of you listening right now, you got to ask yourself that question: who's got 4 million in their pockets that want to pay for this? So it's not the first party liability. This is what a lot of people consider. It's not the first party liability. It's not a matter of paying the forensic team to come in and investigate. It's not a matter of paying your insurance premium. It's all the third party liabilities that becomes absolutely devastating. So in Lee's example with that particular vendor, it wasn't just their organization that got compromised. As a result of their compromise, multiple associated organizations also were affected by this breach. That's that third party side. That's that existential side. That's the part that becomes almost impossible to estimate how much this is going to cost, because that infection, that spider web of ransomware and cybercrime has no limits, quite frankly. So first party, maybe affordable. Third party, absolutely devastating. That's what we're seeing on the insurance side. And we're going to tie all this together in a second. The one of the remaining things that I want to share with everyone is I just want to talk about regulations. Okay, the idea right now is that a lot of you listening have a choice to do better voluntarily. You can go out and you can do some research and you can have some conversations. You can talk to some smart people. You can participate in stuff like this and think critically and make voluntary decisions to do better for your business. But if you fall in this left-hand column, this list of industries right now, then you might recognize this list of acronyms on the right-hand side, various rules and regulatory bodies today that have been implemented by the Fed, by the state, by your local governments, insurance providers, you name it. The idea that another organization outside of your business is now telling you what good looks like, do it or else, there are consequences if you fail to comply. A couple of examples that Lee and I are seeing more and more now is this idea of, if you look to buying a new partnership with an organization, or you're setting up a new PSA with a new firm that you want to work with, it's not out of the question today to have a vendor reach out to you and say, hey, Bergen KDV, we'd love to work together and we love what you guys offer, but before we engage in any sort of activities together, we need you to fill out this cyber risk questionnaire. We need to figure out what you guys are doing. We might need a declaration of your cyber insurance policy. That is becoming commonplace today. So some of these regulations that you're seeing on here, if you're in manufacturing and you haven't heard of CMMC yet, you need to check it out. If you're in the retail space, in any general sense of the retail space, and you haven't heard of the FTC safeguards, you need to check that out. HIPAA for healthcare, Sarbanes-Oxley for finance, the list goes on here. Obviously, COPA for education. The point is, change is coming. If it hasn't hit you already, change is coming. And quite frankly, there's nothing more painful today than talking to an organization, or an organization reaching out to say, hey, Bergen KDV, hey, Jake, I've seen some of your information. I've seen some of your stuff on LinkedIn. I know you guys do cybersecurity. I got to tell you, one of our contractors, one of our lead contractors that represents 95% of our business's annual revenue, just hit us with new rules we need to abide by. And rough math says it's going to be $250,000 for us to get up to snuff in order to maintain or continue engaging business as normal. I don't have $250,000 to throw at this. Is there anything cheaper? And that's got an unfortunate answer to it. So the point is, change is coming. There are instances, and they're becoming more and more prevalent, where you don't have a choice anymore. And I'd like to think that a portion of you listening today still have a choice to take this more seriously on your own regard or on your own accord. But like the title and the introductory slide said, how long is your team going to wait before you make this a priority? Because it is coming. Okay. Very last thing before I recap, because I know we're kind of covering a lot of different core topics here, but this is just a little bit of that thought stacking. I want to talk about what the new IT guy looks like. And for the record, when we say IT guy, girl, the new IT resource, the new dedicated IT resource in the situation or scenario where you say, hey, we want a full-time employee, okay? The new IT guy that you're looking for today would be the first to admit that this job, his or her job, is bigger than one person, that he or she values your network and the business built upon it more than his or her pride. They would welcome third-party assistance by acknowledgement that this job is bigger than themselves. They would advocate for change in a contingency plan. They themselves play the what-if game. What if I hit the lottery? What if I get sick? What if I get hit by a bus? Sometimes IT guys get hit by a bus. So They are advocates for contingency planning because they know what's on the other side of this. So that's the new IT guy, and the new IT guy would be the first to admit that there's no such thing as 100%. And where I'm going with this is I got a story actually pretty fresh here, talking to a prospect again this week. Could have been this week, could have been last week, could have been last month. We have similar conversations. These are the real conversations that are being had right now. This particular gentleman, and he said it with a smile in his voice, was when he started his career, 1 certification, sure. I'm eager, I'm young and I'm eager, I want to get going. 2 certifications, hell yeah, right? I'm expanding my services. 3, now I'm becoming a valuable asset. 4, man, I feel like a master. But then it was 5, and then it was 6, and then it was 7, and it's gotten all the way up to 12 certifications now. And this gentleman looked at me and he just goes, something's bound to slip through the cracks. Okay, I cannot possibly be an expert in 12 things. And again, we're going to talk more about that too. We've got a Robert Half report, but this takeaway from this particular slide, this topic, is to acknowledge that this job is bigger than one person. If you're an organization that has one person today, you have a guide, you need to be asking that conversation, and you need to not be afraid to approach them and say, are you being overworked? Are you overwhelmed? Are there things that are slipping? What's the wish list look like? Could we be doing better? Okay, so that's confessions from an IT guy. 1 cert, sure. 2 certs, 4 certs, heck yeah. 12 certs, I'm stretched a little thin right now. Something's bound to slip. So that is kind of the end of the market perspective piece. And I just wanted to recap, what have we established thus far? And these are the core takeaways here. Nobody is 100% secure. Okay, we've established that. The threats are real, and the bad guys continue to win, and they're reinvesting. They're getting more aggressive, and they're more sophisticated than ever. Even if you are ahead of this, per Lee's story of that big IT vendor there, it can still be very, very painful. So you need to plan for failure. Insurance is tighter and far more expensive, but you need it. Okay, you really got 2 options, right? You can self-insure with some super deep pockets and roll the dice, or you can jump through the hoops and get a cyber insurance policy that's preferably comprehensive, and it's going to cost you a little bit of money. Number 5, changes in regulations are coming from every direction. If they haven't hit you yet, promise they will. Okay, it's happening in real time here. We could be, quite frankly, from the Fed's perspective, we're a day away from another executive order that's going to dramatically change your business or your industry. Number 6 was failure to comply comes with consequences, right? If you don't follow these rules today, if something bad happens to you and you're now being told this is what good looks like, and you neglect to address these particular items, there are financial consequences from your auditor, from your examiner, from your insurance provider, from the Fed, from the state, from your local governments, and the list goes on. Like that topic up there in the right says, no one's coming for you, it's up to you. And last but not least, number 7, IT has indeed become bigger than one person. So pausing just for a second to see here, I know that we've had some questions. A lot of folks were just looking for awareness and how to prevent cybersecurity problems. I think we're getting to the actual options side. We're going to talk about navigating your alternatives next here. And then also those just mentioning, how much urgency, this is just a question, how much urgency do you need to have? Hopefully that's pretty evident at this point in time already in the presentation here. You need to have some urgency on this. This has got to be top of the list for the team. So in terms of navigating your alternatives, for starters, now Lee, I'll pass it back over to you because you really tell a great story with this, but the bar today is defensibility. What does that mean, Lee Roberts?
It means that we're not advocating you spend millions and millions and millions of dollars on this, but spending $1 is probably not the best business decision either. So depending on where you're at in your technology journey, depending on a lot of the things that you did such a good job of covering, the message that we want to get out is we have the opportunity to take control over this right now before it's mandated, as you just said, and just start prioritizing this and start working a plan. It's not something you need to forklift overnight. Start doing the right things and continue to work on it and really establish a culture of. And when it comes to phishing, that has nothing to really do other than the education side with you spending dollars and dollars and dollars. It's merely a culture of education. And I think you have a very important point. When we look at the testing results, it is the managers, it is the executives that consistently fail this stuff at higher rates than others within the organization. And that's a big, big problem because not only are they the ones that could potentially put you at risk, they're the ones that are going to be likely spoofed to the others as well. So that is our message: is we're not advocating that you need to spend millions of dollars, but spending probably isn't the best strategy as well. And start having conversations with your advisors outside of your organization, with your leadership teams, with your directors, however you want that to look, and start making some prioritization decisions and some budgeting decisions that are going to move you in the right direction, because it's a lot more fun to do now on your terms and to be able to plan for it than to have regulatory items them down. And we're following these things all of the time, and we could spend a whole hour talking about it, but they're coming from every angle, and they will be conflicting, they will be overlapping, they will not get it right. So it's best we take control as best we can and start making them.
I saw, just a quick sidebar, Lee, you mentioned there that, you know, these folks making the rules right now, it's kind of that question of, well, who are they, right? Who are these folks making the rules? We said the Fed, we said the state, we said local governments, we said insurance underwriters, auditors, examiners, in particular regulatory bodies, every direction. What's really funny and ironic is there's a framework, a nationally recognized cybersecurity framework called NIST, N-I-S-T. Any of you are welcome following along. You're welcome to go out to and Google that. NIST right now on their website has essentially a request for information, so an RFI. The folks making the rules have an RFI sitting out there for additional experts to provide some perspective, meaning we don't have everything figured out right now. We probably need to once again update our cybersecurity framework, and we are recognizing that if just ourselves internally do this, it's kind of the same old, same old. We need third-party perspective. So another thing I just want to point out here, and Lee, thanks for the input on the defensibility topic. The general question is, you know, when bad things happen, who's responsible? And I already mentioned IT. In IT, data is the new oil. So in IT, the liability follows the data. There's a track record. It's like there's multiple ledgers, right, in the crypto space. So liability follows the data. So with or without insurance, we can play both scenarios. The question being asked is, what would a reasonable person or company be doing today to protect themselves, their team, their business, their partners, their vendors, et cetera, and namely their clients? The three answers the three quality answers to that question are: number one, you need to have a firm grasp of scope. Okay, so I had asked at the very beginning here, do you know where you stand today? We're going to talk about how you figure that out, but do you know where you stand today? Do you have a plan? So what's future state supposed to look like? And based off where you're at versus where you're going, as you chip away at that list of things to do, starting with maybe the low-hanging fruit, highest, best use of dollars, are you showing documented, measurable improvement over time, aka intent to do better? Now, you see, when you're doing those things and the hard questions start being asked, what you're looking to demonstrate is no clear evidence of willful negligence. And that's that sliding scale that Lee talks about. It's the story that you can tell that I'm not low-hanging fruit. We had an assessor come in and we know where we stand and we do have a plan. We're outsourcing some of this stuff and we're chipping away at it. And here's this tangible proof, this documented, measurable improvement. I don't have $100,000 a month to spend on our IT. You know, we're a 15 user operation right now. We're doing the best that we can, and here's the actual proof. And you remember a few slides ago when I said how important that documentation is. That's gold today, having that stuff documented. So on the note of, you don't have to be the best, but you need to start. Lee, you also mentioned we're not asking you to forklift your solution overnight. Okay, most of you might have to blow up the entire organization and start from scratch. I mean, we see that every single day. The point of starting right now is you're not the manufacturer calling me saying, Jake, we have been aware of CMMC compliance for 18 months. We've neglected to do anything, but our day of reckoning has come. And that's a real story. This particular vendor in the Department of Defense side of things represents 95% of this organization's revenue. They've got 6 months to make a $250,000 change. And it's not even about the money. It's the fact that you can't forklift an entire network in 6 months. It kind of comes back to the what's the state of the IT landscape right now. It's hard to find good cyber help. Everyone's busy. This is a priority for everyone out there. So getting started merely means, hey, maybe over the course of 18 months, you've got a chance to make a $250,000 changes. In 6 months' time, you're squeezing it. And if you do squeeze it, you're likely to have the same outcome of when, everyone remembers March of 2020, when everyone got kicked out of their offices and everyone was working from home. And they say in 2 weeks time, over 3 years of technology innovation hit most of America's business. That created a lot of gaps, a lot of leakage. And that's why we saw a 50% increase year over year here with the cybercrime. So when you force this stuff, when you rush this stuff, if you're being told what to do, things get messy, things get very expensive. So you don't have to be the best, but you need to start. How do you start? And that's a great question. That's actually one of the questions. We've got 3 questions right now asking, where do we get started? Here's what I would recommend that you guys do. There is a whole host of self-evaluation tools sitting out there today that you're welcome to utilize. But in terms of you can't manage what you can't measure, having a firm grasp of scope, first and foremost, where are we at right now? And is everything on our plate soaking up our resources, relevant and most important, aka are the initiatives that we're working on and the tech dollars we are spending and allocating, are we allocating them towards the right things? So if you go the self-evaluation route, it's kind of the equivalent of asking your internal dedicated resources if, hey man, are we all good? Oh yeah, 100%. I got you, you got me. How effective is that action? How much do you trust that? Can you verify it? Are you educated enough in the cyberspace to verify that or to question? How dare you challenge me? This is what I do, and I've been doing it for 45 years. How dare you ask? So are you willing to bet the business on the self-eval results? Okay, whether you're answering the questions or you're asking one of your dedicated resources, are you willing to bet the business? Now, on the contrary, a paid assessment, okay? These are far more cost effective than any organization realizes right now. But having an objective third-party team of experts incentivized to come in and turn over every rock and dig through every nook and cranny, that is bang for buck. Yes, no, maybe. Remember those questions we asked. We're proving the answers. That is coming in and identifying with a vulnerability scan the likelihood of something bad happening. We see what the bad guys see. We're exploring multiple topics, even beyond cybersecurity, to understand at the administrative, physical, technical levels. Where do things stand today? Okay, so what is a holistic picture? Now, this isn't specifically a Bergen KDV plug. What I'm pointing out to you guys is you have 2 options right now. Everyone listening, you're sitting there thinking, okay, where are we at from a security posture? Who do I trust? Who can I ask? And do I trust that answer? This has become, for Bergen KDV in the past year and a half, the paid assessments has become a very, very popular solution. Why? Because bang for buck, call it $6,500, maybe $10,000 one time. You've got an organization that comes in and delivers actual results and shows you where you're at and helps you put that plan together. So the only question that would remain, having gone through a paid assessment, again, not specific to Bergen, because you've got options out there. When you pay for that assessment and you've got the plan, the only question that remains is who's going to start chipping away at that plan? How do you start chipping away at that plan? So that is kind of the transition into this, what are your options today? And like I said, I'm hopeful that by identifying some of those core topics there, that we're able to start piecing these together and understanding that, hey, what I thought was a viable solution or a strategy actually turns out it might be very detrimental to my organization. So say, hypothetically, you go through the self-eval or a paid assessment. Either way, you've got a rough idea of where you're at and it's not pretty and you need to do better. Okay, so we're going to choose to do better. Option number 1 is no change at all. We're just going to continue to cross our fingers. We'll bury our head in the sand. We'll accept the risk. We'll roll the dice. It hasn't happened yet. We're going to self-insure, because a reminder, if you're choosing this path of negligence, if you're saying it's all good and it's not going to happen to me, it can't happen to me, we're special. And I just had an organization tell me that earlier this week again. It's like they're not really looking for us, right? I bit my tongue. We're not there yet. But the truth bomb is they are looking for you. It costs them pennies on the dollar to look for you and to look for everyone. So you're not special. But if you choose to self-insure, aka you're unqualified to bind insurance coverage, there's one inevitable outcome. It's going to happen. It's going to be enormously expensive. And the likelihood of an organization surviving something like that without insurance and without, no one's coming to rescue you, as mentioned, this option 1 has an inevitable outcome. So I wouldn't consider it an option, but I suppose for the sake of discussion, we want to get it out there. So you can always choose to do no change at all. Option number 2 is a little bit more fun. Some of you might have a dedicated IT resource already. And so that's why I said hire a guy or 2, perhaps. Several organizations I'm talking to right now, they've got dedicated IT staff, but those dedicated IT staff recognize that they're under capacity right now. They're in over their head. There's all of these different hats that we talked about. So I just want to do a quick build a tech exercise with you guys for the sake of fun. I think we've got some students listening here as well, so we can kind of jokingly play around with this. So the build a tech exercise goes something like this. Okay, you want to go out and hire a tech. What is the components of a good hire? Well, they're cost effective, right? I can probably get one for 40 or 50 grand plus benefits. Great. They're going to know everything. Back to those certifications. Well, is everything 4 certs or is it 12 certs or is it 20 certs? How much is enough? They're never going to take paid time off. They've got a 24/7 work ethic. They're customer facing. They're a team player. They've got great hygiene, and the list goes on, right? So what are the attributes of a perfect IT hire? And then the reality is, are they in your market? Okay, are they affordable? Would they want to work for you? How about the benefits? How about the tools? How about the equipment that they need? And the list goes on. Are they a day-to-day? Are they a project? Are they that high-level VCIO? I had one gentleman tell me this week, he's like, Jake, I haven't taken a vacation in 5 years, and I can't, because I can't leave this place. I'm working 18 hours a day right now. I can't leave this place. So then your choice is you burn them out, they leave, they take all that tribal knowledge with them, you have no documentation, and you're kind of left with the same situation the rest of us are in. Where the heck are we at right now, and what's our strategy going forward? So this is the Robert Half report I mentioned. I'm being generous when I say a technology resource is going to cost you 40 to 50K. So Robert Half, pretty popular report. This is page 1 of 3. You can see there's multiple titles here. I think I had estimated there's over 33 titles that were listed on this report. This is page 1 of 3. And you can see the average salaries ranging between 60 to 150K. So the takeaway here with option 2 is if you're choosing to pursue an IT resource, a dedicated IT resource, you really do need to quantify how much that's going to cost you. And you really do need to sit down and have an honest conversation with him or her on what are the gaps? Where do you need to be supplemented? Okay, and speaking of supplementation, this is really the third and final option here, is you find a third party to help supplement, AKA outsource. When I started in this IT career about 7 years ago now, outsourcing was pretty taboo. Today, it's quite commonplace. We outsource everything. When you really sit back and think about it, there are a few things that we do ourselves, quite frankly. So we rely on a lot of other professionals and experts to help us in our day-to-day. The same concept goes with leveraging an outsourced IT provider. You get an access. So as opposed to, say, the cost of one dedicated resource between 60 and 150 grand a year, what if that one resource is all of a sudden 50 resources? What if that one resource is now 30 day-to-day resources, 5 project resources, 1 high-level chief information officer, plus all of the tools? So the idea here is you achieve a lot of economies of scale. It's predictable, it's consistent, it's something that you can count on, and it addresses the honest conversation you should have with your IT resource. Are we 100% secure? Are we falling behind? And trying to get them to admit that, you know what, I really could use some help. A lot of organizations are afraid to have that conversation because the knee-jerk reaction is, am I about to get fired? No. And so the hidden menu item here, animal style, the hidden menu is option number 4. And it's becoming very, very popular. And it's what we call a co-managed solution. It's where you achieve the best of both worlds. Between option 2 and option 3 equal option 4. The idea is that I do have a dedicated resource, and he or she is fantastic with the day-to-day stuff. But they've got a laundry list of projects that they'd love to get to. We don't have the budget for all of them. We don't have a lot of direction right now. He or she doesn't have the time to sit back and put a plan together. So on and on we go. The hidden menu, co-managed, option number 4 is the idea of have that honest conversation. What could be supplemented? Bring a third-party organization like a Bergen KDV in to say, what do you want to do? Here's what we're going to do. Let's narrow that line of demarcation, that gray area. Who's responsible for this? Who's accountable for that? And let's stay in constant communication. Visibility solves a lot of problems today. So that is kind of the gist of it. I think when we send this presentation out, we can talk about some bonus stuff, like determining your risk profile. These are just questions for your team to ask. The number 1 is, what is an acceptable financial loss for your business today? Okay. And I guarantee you, if you're sitting up amongst the C-level, nobody's on the same page there. Lee's going to say $300,000. I might say $3 million. I don't know. It's not my money. What's an acceptable financial loss for your business today? And compare that to what the average cost of a cyber or data breach is. and some other fun questions as well, right? So if you chose to do better, how much would that positively affect your business valuation as well? I mean, there are topics here that we could talk about. This is all from a defense standpoint. Okay, we're talking about reacting right now to these macro elements. There's an offensive play here as well, like having and demonstrating that your team's buttoned up from an IT perspective, leading with that in part of your presentations, demonstrating that intent to do better. So there's a lot of positives that can come with this. Obviously, it's for another conversation here. These are the absolute basics. Again, if those of you are still sticking around here, if you want to screenshot some of this, these are most valuable through the eyes of an underwriter today. Multi-factor authentication, security awareness training, the list goes on. This is the low-hanging fruit stuff. So one of the questions we've had in the queue there was, if it says we're behind, we know we're behind, what do you recommend as a first step? I recommend the security assessment, followed by finding an organization. If you don't want to manage all of this yourself, or your dedicated IT resource doesn't want to manage all of this themselves, find yourself an organization that's got a package that covers the basics, the tools, so to speak. These packages are out there. And then last but not least, an incident response plan. Okay, you guys need to build one. I try it yourself first and foremost. Identify the players, who's part of that team, what are their roles and responsibilities, what are their key functions and operations within your business that you'd like to prioritize in the event of a disaster. How would decisions be made in real time, right? Who's got veto power? Who's got decision power? The list goes on. Lee, I'm going to pause because the last question I think we got time to address here. What was the 3-second test on the last slide?
Yeah, and I think that it's so important when you talk about having the discussion, and it's one of the things that when I'm asking some of the probing questions, when I'm in a conversation with a business, the answer to how is our security or how confident are we or some variant of that question tends to get out very quickly. There will be a whole bunch of acronyms like terabytes and firewalls and security layers and multi-factor, these things that we're throwing at it. And about 30 seconds into it, the person that asked the question is regretting asking the question because they don't know what's really being talked about. And everybody just assumes that they got it. And what we're saying with the 3-second test, if you look at this scale, this is one of the graphics that we use in our security reporting that Jake talks about. And it's different per industry you're in. But what we want that 3-second test to be is, Jake, I know I'm not perfect, but I'm a 560 right now out of 850, 850 being the best. And I know that these are the 3 or 4 priorities that we're going to be working on that are going to move that needle, hopefully, to positive. So it should not sound like a very technical response to the question of how secure we are. What we're saying, if something is bad to happen to you, or just a pure cultural and leadership conversation standpoint about making sure you're doing the right things, it's have something that you can actually understand, much like the FICO score in your personal finances. Have a scoring system that actually measures those 4 areas. And Jake went very quickly, but everybody thinks security is just IT. It's actually one of many different components that we actually measure as far as how a compromise, breach, or something bad could happen. And this barometer takes into account all of those. So it's a very, very good exercise to go through as a first step to see where you're at. And then all of those other questions, I hope you screenshotted some of those questions on your response plan. Because thinking through that is going to be probably a better way for you to really understand and answer the question of where you're at. Just having a conversation with the people inside your walls and navigate this, and you'll see the differences of opinions or the blank stares or the I don't knows come up very, very quickly. And then, as I mentioned in that example, the best of the best are testing it, and it's still having problems. So that's a whole nother level that you can get to there. Anyway, that's the 3-second test. It should be very, very easy to know where you're at, not listen to a 1-minute dissertation on all of the investments you've made and those types of things.
Appreciate it, Lee. We are at the top of the hour here. So I don't know if Bethany normally jumps in and wraps this up, but I just want to say
I think it's all you.
Yeah, perfect. I just want to say thank you to everybody but it looks like the vast majority stuck around here through the duration. Again, the objective here is just to educate you guys to the point that you feel confident in asking stronger questions amongst your team, raising a little hell, if you will, getting to the root of some of your issues as efficiently as possible. And for those of you today that are really truly pondering, where are we at? How confident am I in our current solution? The first step for most organizations today is some form or another. You need to have a paid discovery taken care of, or otherwise you're in that self eval world, and you got to trust those answers. So have an objective third-party organization come in, figure out where you're at, plant that flag in the ground, have them also help you prioritize the recommendations they've got based on valuable business impact, right? Bang per buck. And then, ask yourself those questions, and who's going to do the work? Do we want to hire someone to do the work internally? Do we want to manage all of that? Do we want to retain all of that? Do we want to train all of that? Who holds them accountable? Those are honest questions to ask with that option number 2 on that build the tech exercise. Alternatively, find yourself a third-party resource out there. They're called managed service providers or managed security service providers. Find yourself an MSP that you want to work with, that you agree with their philosophy, and figure out how they may supplement where you're at and help you get from that point A to point B without breaking the bank. Yeah, that's it. Lee, I appreciate your time as well. Thank you very much. We'll go ahead and adjourn here and we can wrap it up. So, by the way, if anyone has, and we mean this, connect with us. Myself, Lee, very vocal on the LinkedIn platform. Shoot us a connection invite. There's little 2-minute, 3-minute, sometimes 5-minute videos that we're putting out there. Just our thoughts, paraphrasing some articles, some new insights that we read. It's important to keep this stuff top of mind. It's important to stay up to date with this stuff because it's clearly changing so remarkably fast. And if you happen to have any questions whatsoever, just as a call to action here, yeah, give us a holler. You can shoot us an email, connect with me on LinkedIn, or give the Bergen KDV main line a call. We'd be happy to have a conversation with you guys. So once again, thank you very much. 3 minutes over. Lee Roberts, always a pleasure. And we'll talk to y'all soon. Cheers.
Thanks, everybody. See ya.